It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up.
Let me make sure I open this so I don't struggle during the presentation. You see what I mean? Yeah. First and foremost, how are you doing? Let me start with
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Where are you joining us from?
Upstate New York, not New York City. It's Ithaca, New York.
Oh, you gotta always be specific?
Yes.
They start asking you questions about the Big Apple?
And it's the opposite of the Big Apple.
Oh, okay. Alessandro, what about yourself?
I'm good,
Yes?
always.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. Because, I was checking in the room, and we do have some coffee lovers. So I think this topic is definitely something because I want them to understand what happens from the process, the whole process, all the way to their cups, right?
Yes.
So I want to start with asking, especially Cornell University collaborating with Nespresso, and give us a bit of context. What brings you two on stage?
Yes, exciting to be here and thank you for your interest. Indeed, coffee is at risk by 2050. If we continue like that, 60% of the coffee land will not be anymore usable. And the reality is that if you look at the climate emissions, more than 50% happens at farm level. And there is where the answer should be. So we need to focus where we can have an impact. The answer at Nespresso is the regenerative agriculture. And it focuses on nature-based farming on the one side, on enhancing biodiversity and trying to improve the livelihoods of the farmers. When it comes to biodiversity, here the big challenge is how to measure it, and that's where the partnership with Cornell Lab of Ornithology, that's very complicated, happens.
Which immediately makes us go to Dr. Viviana.
Yes, so biodiversity is also in crisis, is in trouble. We have over 1 million species that are endangered worldwide. They're facing extinction, some of them in less than 2 decades. And so to really save both coffee and biodiversity, we really need to focus on what the biodiversity potential of agriculture is in general, but specifically of coffee. And so to do that, we have, for the past 4 years, developed a tried and true tool called the Biodiversity Progress Index, and is based on birds. And I hope after today we'll convince you that birds are the best indicators of biodiversity. So I'm going to show you some of the birds that we've been using and seeing in coffee farms. So for example, I can see.
Right.
The yellow-eared parrot. So this is an endangered parrot in Colombia that needs a native palm to nest in. So if the native palms are not in the coffee farm, you will not see this parrot. This is the magenta-throated wood star. And this is a male, and it displays that throat beautifully when it's courting. And you will not see this if you apply pesticides on your farm. Three-wattled bellbird. This is a species from my home country in Costa Rica. If you don't have big, tall, native trees, you will not see this bird in your farm. Or the red-crowned woodpecker. You need enough trees that have also had enough time to die, because woodpeckers need trees that have died. And lastly, the coffee warbler. And this bird actually eats a beetle that digs into the coffee bean, and it makes the coffee bean unusable. So if you employ enough regenerative practices, you're going to see this warbler, and you're actually going to have better coffee.
Better quality coffee. Okay, so by the pictures, number one, we can agree that birds are the best dressed animals ever.
Yes.
But also, you've indicated that birds are a good indicator for biodiversity. Now, in our preparation, I heard a story of you following birds for 6 months, one specific type at a time, for 6 months without no GPS or nothing. Please tell us about that story and why that was.
Yeah, so right after college, I got a job following birds all day, and I would take it's a radio transmitter antenna, and I would catch birds in coffee farms using nets. And then I would put that transmitter on the back of the bird using a little backpack. And they can still fly with it, but you have to be very careful. And then with an antenna, I would follow that same bird from 4 a.m. to 6 p.m. all day, and I did that for many different birds all day. And what was really enlightening to me was that I was able to see how birds were using coffee farms. So some of the birds, they were only in the coffee early in the morning. As soon as it got hot, they needed a riparian forest strip or a small forest remnant to go in. Some birds use, if there were enough shade trees, they could go and eat there, or they would use those shade trees to kind of fly from one patch of forest to another. So that's when I realized that I wanted to become kind of a translator of sorts. I wanted to really... A bird whisperer, but really take that information and really think of how statistically and robustly take all of that and really be able to guide and help say, what are they telling us about our farming practices?
Which I think brings us to a good point. Perhaps Alessandro can pitch in on how does bird then, or biodiversity, connect to regenerative agriculture?
I mean, to come to biodiversity in the land, you need to have certain practices. So you need to start somewhere. And there is where we collaborate with Rainforest Alliance, where we developed a regenerative scorecard that focuses in helping farmers in water management, in soil management, in crop resilience, in livelihoods, but also in biodiversity measure. Historically, we are pioneering, due to our model, this work, as since 2003, with a AAA program and through 650 agronomists, we work with 150,000 farmers directly. We focused on quality, on sustainability, and on productivity. But it's only 4 years ago that with Rainforest Alliances we started to think above the farm level and try to enhance biodiversity. And here is where an indicator that was developed helps. And on the practices, working with Rainforest Alliance, we can help the farmers. It's a scorecard that we developed with Rainforest, and it's open source, so we put it as pre-competitive out to the market. We encourage all coffee players to join this needed change and transformation, and the results we hope we will see with the biodiversity scores.
Right, so then, thank you for that, Alessandro. But then, what are the results? What are the findings?
Yeah, so I'll tell a little bit about the tools. So we have eBird. We developed eBird about 20 years ago, and it is the world's largest biodiversity database. eBird. So eBird. And birds are really good indicators in general of ecosystem health. They're everywhere. They respond really quickly to changes. So I would challenge all of you, if you plant native trees in your backyard, if you have a yard, you will see different bird species almost right away. They react really quickly to changes. And so using this tool, the Biodiversity Progress Index that we've developed and tested for the past 4 or 5 years, we've evaluated 84,000 farms worldwide for Nespresso. And so some of the cool results that we found, for example, in Colombia, where we've evaluated 36,000 farms for their biodiversity, they significantly contribute to biodiversity both at the farm and at the landscape level. All of these efforts in regenerative practices. Okay. They're really making a difference, especially agroforestry. In only 7 to 10 years of planting trees, you will see a big difference in biodiversity.
Now, I would imagine that biodiversity is a very difficult complex to measure because everybody would have their own set of indicators. So what are alternatives, or what do you say are exactly this is necessary in order to say it's a good measure?
Yes, so there's emerging techniques such as eDNA. There are also some measures that use remote sensing. So when you have kind of a satellite image, or if you use LiDAR and you fly a drone to kind of measure. But biodiversity as a whole is really, really, really hard to measure. From soil microorganisms to insects. I took entomology and I almost went blind trying to identify insects. And to all the different mammals, you hardly ever see mammals. You only see their prints. So it's really hard not only to collect the data, but also identify everything and then store all of that information in a cohesive way. So birds are right now the only one indicator that has a global database, but also we have a very tried and true scientifically based indicator that we can use right now worldwide.
Okay, so then, Alessandro, what does Nespresso do with the results? Or based on that, what are the goals and the next plans?
Yeah, I think we have an indicator that is usable today. That's the first thing. So we can start, right? We know where we are. We have a baseline. If we take the regenerative scorecard with Rainforest Alliance, there are 3 levels: bronze, silver, and gold. Gold being then the regenerative practice. We have today 76% at bronze level in our AAA farms. So
It's getting.
at 25, we want to come to 80%.
Okay.
But 2030, we want to have 90% of the AAA farmers to have achieved gold.
Gold,
So we are at the start of a very critical period of 7 to 10 years where we need to implement that regenerative practices. We want to show the way, and we hope that many, many others will join.
Will follow, yes. Okay. Looking at the time, I guess I have space for one more question, and I think this is going to be interesting for you. So, based on biodiversity, what is the impact of biodiversity on a cup of coffee?
On a cup of coffee.
Yes, on one particular cup of coffee.
So instead of telling you,
Right.
I am going to show you
Right,
and
okay.
take you all. So
I can see it here.
this is the biodiversity potential that you can hear and see in a cup of coffee. So this is the result of regenerative practices done well and in partnership with others. And we really invite everybody to take up this challenge of investing in these practices to benefit biodiversity.
Okay. Anything you... yeah, that's amazing. Anything you'd like to add?
I would like to add, it's not an easy journey, and we cannot do it alone. We can do it only with partnership in that area like Cornell. But I think the big challenge is how to bring all the coffee sector, which is needed, to that. We'll do our part in terms of doing on the field as much as we can, and we'll do our part in motivating, incentivizing, showing the path with all the coffee, within all the coffee industry.
So I would like to end with a call to action, if you might. What would your call to action be, Viviana?
The biodiversity potential of coffee, especially the 10 million hectares worldwide we have of coffee. So the biodiversity potential is too important in this biodiversity crisis to give up and to not address.
I think that's the perfect way to end it. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Viviana and Alessandro. Right on the time, too. Thank you very much. You can, yes. Thank you very much. So now you know the importance of biodiversity on your cup of coffee. So I ask you, drink carefully.
It's time to wake up.